to see you.
Hi, Gary. Just checking in to see if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, it's 5:30 if you are ready to call the meeting to order. Can you hear me?
Okay, welcome everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Could you get roll call, please?
Gary Cecil,
Present?
Bryce Chisholm,
Here.
Jeff Harvey.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum of the Ward 5 Neighborhood Advisory Board. Mr. Chair, our first item today is public comment. Members of the public may hear, observe, and provide public comment virtually by registering through the following link, which can be found on reno.gov/meetings. https://links.reno.gov/3TDIFMP. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the NAB's agenda. The NAB may not take action upon any matter not agendized on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you're an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment, please raise your hand at this time. We do have registered public comment this evening. Our first public commenter is Cotter Conway, followed by Brian Cassidy.
Welcome.
Yeah. Can you turn on the mic? It'll be green.
There you
There,
go.
There we
green,
go.
green is good. Okay. I'm good. Okay. So my name's Cotter Conway. I am running for Reno Justice of the Peace, and I've been here before at other meetings, but I'm just trying to make the final round. I'm running on the fact that I have the right experience and I'm the right choice for that job. One of the stories I've been telling lately, many of you may have known of David Humke. He has since passed, but he one time ran. He was I think he was District 26 in the Assembly, and then he was on the Washoe County Commission. So he was an experienced guy, but when he finished those jobs, he ran for judge. And he ran against an actually very experienced attorney who does family law, but won. And then within 3.5 years, he was out. And it wasn't because he wasn't a good guy. He wasn't because he had some experience, at least certainly in government, but he didn't have the right experience. He wasn't qualified to be a judge. And so I'm really asking the voters to be informed, to look up what I have, because I am very experienced. I got 32 years of courtroom experience. I have 8 years as a judge, either as a judge pro tem, which is like a substitute judge, and for the last 3 years, I was the appointed court referee in the Reno Justice Court, so right where I'm trying to get right now. So again, I gave this pitch all over. I'm just trying to get the voters informed. I think when the voters are informed, they'll make the right choice. And it's tough to get them informed and be willing to go down ballot. But that's my hope, is that I'm convincing them to, one, be informed about the candidates, realize that Cotter C. Conway has the right experience, is the right choice, get down ballot and make that informed decision. Thank you again for your time.
Oops, sorry. Commenter is Brian Cassidy.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Advisory Board, and I think I saw Councilwoman Taylor around here. But I want to take this time and introduce myself. I'm Brian Cassidy. My wife and I are small business owners here in Reno. We own Reno, or Junk King. But more importantly, I'm a candidate for Reno City Council Ward 5. And it's an honor to be here because I've been looking at the NAB for Ward 5, and I think it's very important, and I've talked to Bryce about it too, is that you guys are the closest voice to the constituents. And when elected, I want to be able to work with you guys as close as I can to make sure the voices of our constituents are heard on city council. Because I think it's important that this is not more or less about what agendas we have for the city, but it's more or less about us, the folks that live here and what we want to see in our city. So I think that's what we're representing the most here. For me, I want to put Reno families first. I think it's very important. I got a young son, 12 years old, plays baseball up at the Raw League. And I'd like to just see everything that we can possibly do for our families. And when I take the seat of council, there's 3 things I want to build upon, and that's the ethics, integrity, and transparency. I think that's very important in our city so that everybody knows what we're doing and what we're doing for them and working for their best interest. So again, just want to introduce myself, and thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more signed up for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, that was it.
Okay, if we could move on to A3. Do I have an emotion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I will so move.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll
Did I-
second that.
Mr. Cecil?
Gary Cecil for the record. I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved.
Mr. Cecil, if you could turn up your microphone when you speak, we can barely hear you.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor going to be here?
Hi, Mr. Chair. Councilwoman Taylor wasn't able to attend, but she did provide the updates for the staff liaison report. So Jen will give those right now. So we'll move on to item A5.
Thank you. The next NAB meeting is scheduled for November 12th. Also, Rolling Rec will be at Barbara Bennett Park from October 1st through November 29th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays from 8 to 12. Rolling Rec is a park program that provides free activities for kids. The 3rd annual Trunk or Treat on October 24th at Paradise Park, and it's scheduled from 5 to 7 p.m. There's also a community cleanup at UNR's Green Parking Lot on October 19th, and that's from 9 to 12 p.m. There will be a teen pool party at Moana Springs Community Aquatics and Fitness Center on Saturday, October 12th. And finally, the Veterans Day Parade is set for November 11th to begin at 11:11 a.m. on South Virginia. And that is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And so we'll move on to business items. B1, presentation and update of City of Reno staff.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Angela Foose. I'm the Assistant Director for Development Services here at the City of Reno. Just getting it started. So today I'm going to talk to you about our zoning code. Over the last about year and a half, we have been working on a cleanup to our zoning code. We are at the, I would call it the final stages, but before we kick it off and go back to Planning Commission and City Council, we're reaching out to all the NABs to make sure you guys have kind of a one last opportunity to weigh in, get your opinion, make sure that you share with your constituents what some of the changes are. So we're just going to spend a few minutes kind of going through high level what some of the changes are. When we adopted our zoning code, this was a big overhaul change. This was done in 2021. We'd worked with a consultant. We'd spent about 2 years working through that process. And we always knew, you know, anytime you adopt a new, very big document, it's about 700 pages. It's a very technical document. We knew there was going to be changes. So we've been keeping a list of things that either staff reads and says, well, that doesn't make sense. Why did we say that? Or it's a conflict. Maybe there's 2 sections in our zoning code on different pages that conflict with each other. We also found areas that we said, oh, we probably went a little too far with some of these regulations, or maybe we didn't go far enough with other regulations. And then, of course, anytime we have a legislative session, there's changes that come out of that that usually impact our zoning code. So we have a number of things that we need to update just based on the 2023 legislative session. So we've had a lot of discussion on a number of other topics, things that we're not touching as part of this code cleanup, things that are much bigger and maybe more specific that we're doing. I would say we're tackling them separately. So here's a list of things that we're not including as part of the zoning code cleanup, but we are going to be addressing separately over the next year. So a big one is accessory dwelling units. We're going to do a kickoff with a bunch of stakeholder meetings probably in January. We're going to wait till we get through the holidays, kick that discussion off. Another one is short-term rentals. That would be Airbnbs and the VRBOs. We currently do not regulate short-term rentals in the city of Reno. So the question is, do we want to start regulating them? And what does that look like? A lot of discussion will be happening on that topic. Changes to the noise ordinance. That's been a topic that has been I'd say a hot topic with our downtown residents, so we are not touching it as part of the code cleanup. That will be something if council initiates that change. Changes to the tree ordinance, as we're calling it, tree protection standards. We'd initially proposed to make some small changes with the code cleanup, but we're decided we're going to take that out and do a more robust tree ordinance separate. So we're taking all of that stuff out, not making any changes to what's in code today. Updates to our sign code. That's something we have a number of things that we just need to update. So we're doing that as a completely separate text amendment. We're holding a series of stakeholder meetings and planning commission and council feedback over the next couple months. And then finally, anything related to telecommunications, which is specific to, that's not mine, is it? Telecommunications is cell towers. We're doing a separate zoning code text amendment on that topic. All right, so kind of where have we been? We've been in this zoning code update process for about a year and a half. We initially went out to the NABs summer of 2023 and just gave everyone a heads up. We're going to be making some changes. We included all of the NAB members as a stakeholder. So hopefully if you've been on the NAB for the last year and a half, you've been getting regular updates. We also held a technical advisory committee that was about 30 different professionals. These were people that use the zoning code, anyone from engineers, planners, landscape architects, both in the private sector and at the City of Reno in the public sector. We included them in that meeting. If you've never read the zoning code, we wouldn't call you a technical expert, but if you use it on a regular basis, we included you as a technical expert. So we held about 7 meetings. That was last fall. And then we went to a couple smaller groups. The Historic Resource Commission we went to several times. Again, kind of smaller, kind of one-off meetings. We met with the Landscape Architect Group. We met with the school district, a number of just different kind of local development groups as well that were interested. And then we had 9 stakeholder meetings. So we did this last year. It was September, October, November, December. We held in-person meetings. We held virtual meetings. I will say that they were not well attended. Anytime we deal with really broad discussions, it's tough to get people interested. If it's something specific, such as signs, I think people are a little bit more in tune because maybe they can say, oh, signs, I can relate to that. I can tell you what I like and don't like. But when we say, it's 700 pages of zoning, come and talk to us about your feelings, most people don't even want to be involved. Last fall or spring, we went to the Planning Commission. We held 3 separate workshops, again, just getting feedback, not making any formal recommendations. And then similar, we went to City Council and got some feedback. So it's been a long process. We've had a lot of meetings and we're getting close to the end, which I will tell you from staff's perspective, we're super excited about. Big picture, some of the things that you can look forward to. If you've ever opened our zoning code, we have what we call our table of uses. This is probably 15 pages of tables that look just like this. We have all our different zoning districts at the top, residential and commercial and industrial. And then on the left is all our different types of uses. So we took a hard look at all the different uses, where they're allowed, where they require some kind of entitlement. And we said, does this make sense? So we went back and we cleaned that up. Just as an example, public facility zoning. That would typically be schools, libraries, fire stations. We had warehouse as a public facility use. We said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you have a warehouse in a public facility zoning? So we looked at those kinds of things and said, let's clean this up and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't. And then we also had a list of additional use standards. And so we spent a lot of time saying, if you have uses, and they're allowed in these different zoning districts, we also have these additional requirements. Let's go back and make sure those requirements are what makes sense today. So as an example, a car wash. You might think, okay, that seems simple. Why do you need additional use standards for a car wash? I will tell you, car washes have a lot of impacts when they're located anywhere near residential. You think about the noise, you think about the lights at night, you think about the hours that they're allowed. So we went back and we looked at all those types of uses and the impacts to neighbors and said, let's make sure that we're protecting neighbors and protecting other uses that are around them. So again, we made some changes that we feel better protects residents and better protects neighbors from some of these uses that have big impacts. Oh, I think I've lost it. There we go. All right, protection of neighborhoods. This was a really big topic for us. I will say one thing, if you've ever read our master plan, it is big on infill and not encouraging sprawl. So while in theory, we like walkable neighborhoods, we like density, we're also finding that as these neighborhoods, these existing neighborhoods are being developed, we have a lot of pushback from existing community members. And we said, well, let's take some additional look at what can we do from a zoning perspective to better protect those existing neighborhoods? And absolutely, we still want to encourage infill and encourage density and encourage kind of gentrification of streets and neighborhoods. But let's do it in a way that, again, that new development coming in doesn't negatively impact existing homeowners and residents. So we took a look at a lot of those big impacts. Again, car washes is a great example. Anything with loading docks is also a great example. We have a lot of like Jiffy Loops where you have the service bays. Right now, our code says the service bays where the doors go up and down are not supposed to front the street. And we said, we actually think the service bays should front the street and should not be fronting the residential neighbors to the east or the west. And so we went back and we made those kinds of changes. Again, just trying to better fit in with neighborhoods. We also increased what we call our residential adjacency buffer. We had different conflicts in our code. In some sections, we require additional rules if you're within 150 feet of residential zoning. Other rules if you're within 300 feet of residential zoning. So we said, well, let's just have one standard. So we took the higher standard. If you have new development anywhere within 300 feet of residential zoning, we have additional regulations or requirements. Step backs are another big one. So that middle picture is probably a great example. Let's say that that apartment project moved into your neighborhood and you had a single family neighborhood. So, you know, while again, we like infill, we want to support density, we want to make sure that it's designed correctly. So we put in some requirements. If you have, that's that example, a 3 or 4 story building, and you're coming into a neighborhood that's 1 story and 2 story houses, we have new requirements that you have to push back anything above 2 stories. So it's a better buffer. Again, it just better protects the existing neighborhood. Thank you. Industrial. So we, again, took a big look at our industrial uses and we said, where do we allow them? What zoning districts? And where do we need more protection? We allow a lot of the big warehousing and distribution centers by right, meaning no entitlement, no NABs, no planning commission. And we added some steps to say some of these types of uses are big and very impactful. And so if you are close to residential, we're now going to require that you go through a public review process. Things that we can look at are, where are your dock doors? What hours of operation are you doing, right? Do you have big trucks coming in and out at 2 a.m.? That's very different if you're in an industrial neighborhood versus a residential neighborhood. So we tried to add some more, I would say, stricter guidelines when you're developing those big warehouses and distribution centers. We also added a new use for data centers. I will tell you from a planning perspective, we get phone calls constantly from developers that want to bring data centers to our area. Nobody's actually doing it yet because they have, I would say, a big need. They need a lot of land, they need a lot of power, and they need a lot of water. So because we didn't have a use category for data center, it kind of became problematic to say, well, where do we tell these people they can go? So we've added a new category for data center. We've also added a requirement that all new data centers will have to go through a conditional use process. So they'll have to come before the NAB and have to come before the Planning Commission to make sure that they're a right fit for that location and that the design really fits in with that neighborhood. Again, related to dock doors, we have new screening requirements for where you put those dock doors, whether you are a Jiffy Lube with dock doors or some kind of screening, some kind of doors that go up and down, those just more like garage type doors, or you're a big industrial building with lots of different dock doors. We have screening requirements to protect, again, whatever the use is next to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be residential next to you. It could be a commercial center. Again, you want to make sure that the two uses fit well next to each other and that they're designed to kind of mitigate any negative impacts related to lighting, related to noise, related to 24-hour uses. So we added some additional requirements. All right, screening. So our current code has screening requirements. This has been in place for a long time, but it's based on your zoning district. And we found that that didn't really make sense. We said, well, your screening should be based on what your use is. So if you have an apartment project and you're coming in next to a single family development, that screening requirement could include walls, it could include landscaping with trees, it could include any other kind of creative buffer. So we updated it to be more realistic. Again, we want to look at the uses impacting each other, not so much the zoning districts. And then we also have an exemption. If you are required to do something related to screening, whether it's, you know, a row of 20 trees or a 6-foot tall solid wall, and you're coming in as a developer saying, gosh, you know, I have a unique site. Maybe my building is 20 feet lower than the land next to me. So it doesn't really make sense that I have to put in a 6-foot tall wall because it's not screening anything. If I'm down here, and the development next to me is way up here, a 6-foot tall wall doesn't help anything. So we have an exemption. You'd have to go through a minor site plan review, which is an additional review process to kind of show what you're doing in place of screening. So it's not a one size fits all, and we acknowledge that. If everything was square and flat, our jobs would be very easy, but that's not the case anymore. So we did provide some kind of exemptions that still require that additional public review process. There we go. And then fencing. Our fencing code is very confusing. We have fencing standards for residential versus industrial versus stockpiling versus all kinds of crazy things. So because our fencing standards are mixed throughout our code, we said, let's put them all in one location. And then we also added some standards for electrical fencing. And you may think, wow, why are we allowing electrical fencing? That seems like a bad idea. State law changed, and state law now requires that local jurisdictions in our county have to allow electrical fencing. So we pretty much copied and pasted directly verbatim the regulations in state law and put them in our zoning code. Made it very easy for us. School standards. We've had quite a few discussions on schools. As we have come out of COVID, we've had a huge increase in charter schools. We've also now have the WC1 bond that passed, which gave us money for schools, not us, but the school district money. So we are now building new schools, all really great things for the community. But we found that our zoning regulations were a little antiquated. We looked at the county and the city of Sparks, and we said, well, we should all have the same rules. So let's try and better align with how they have zoning rules. And so we updated our code to match them. We also looked at where we allow primary schools, meaning kindergarten through 8th grade, versus where we allow high schools. And we said, why are we limiting? I mean, a school's a school. You generally want schools in residential areas. So let's make that more consistent and easier for schools to go pretty much in any zoning district. So we updated that. One thing that we have found with all these new schools coming in is that our regulations related to vehicle circulation, parent drop-off pickup, where we require school flashers, we're not very good at being consistent on what the requirements are. So we've put in some regulations that now say any new school, whether you're a charter school or a school district, Washoe County School District, we want to see all of these things addressed up front so we don't have issues after you're built and we get a lot of complaints of this is not safe for my kid to cross the street because you didn't put in appropriate crosswalks. So we've added some specific requirements so we acknowledge that these are the things we need to look at for every single school. We also had some questions. Oops, let's go back one more. Some issues, thank you. So not all schools have to go through a conditional use or a public review process. And we recently had a charter school. It was a school with 1,500 kids. So that's a pretty big school. That came through and they only had to go through, we call it a minor conditional use permit. So it's just a staff review, no public review process. That was approved by staff, and then it went to City Council on appeal. And so there was a lot of discussions of 1,500 kids. Why didn't that require a public review process? And so it's kind of brought to light that maybe we should look at all schools, public, private, charter, at a higher level and allow more public review. So we added some language that if it's any school with more than 400 kids, you would now be required to go through that full public review process where it goes to the NAB and it goes to Planning Commission. I will say that is a big leap from what is in code today. So we'll see where that discussion goes with Planning Commission and City Council. All right, and then easy enough, rules and definitions. We just had some sections of our code that we needed to clean up the definitions, areas that were confusing and things that we just didn't have definitions at all. So we've now cleaned that up. It is a much prettier document to look at with all the definitions alphabetically rather than by use and alphabetically. So it's much easier to actually understand how to read our definitions section. So big picture, again, we are seeking input. If anyone wants to read the document, we have a red line document on our website. It's a very big document. If there's a specific topic, something that you've run across as part of being on a NAB, issues that have come up in your neighborhood, feel free to reach out to staff. We can tell you, here's what the code says today. Here's what some of the changes are that might impact whatever the issue is that you're dealing with. And we still have probably, I'd say, 3 to 4 more months to get through before we have a final version that is adopted by City Council. So we are excited because we're getting to the end, but know if you feel like you've missed out on being able to provide input, you still have plenty of time to share with your neighbors and your friends. And hopefully we can have a document that is clean and fresh and much easier to implement. And that is it. Any questions?
I have one question for you, Angela. When these new regulations or codes go into effect, the present or current businesses, are they exempt? Are they grandfathered in prior to this? Because I know there's there's several warehouses that abut residential areas that their docks face those residences and their trucks are going 24/7. Are those businesses exempt or do they have to make any changes with that?
They are grandfathered in. So if you have a use, a business, a conditional use permit, anything that's already been approved, your entitlement, your business license, your building permit is grandfathered in.
Thank you. Gary, Cecil, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a few. Can you hear me well enough now?
A little bit.
Okay, I've got my volume up as loud as I can. Angela, always a pleasure, and just want to first of all commend you for taking this on. It's quite a task. I've looked at the red line document a few times, but it always ends up overwhelming me unless you're a professional in the middle of it. It is a difficult process to review. If you'll forgive me, all I want to do this evening is just to focus on my particular area of interest, which is, as I think you know, is downtown and any changes there that are relevant. I take note that in the monthly council meeting tomorrow, I believe, there's another monthly downtown report, which I love. And I note from that although there have been no businesses opened for a few months here, there are 895 residential units under construction currently, which is fabulous for downtown. And there are 2,528 units that are new residential units planned for downtown. So on top of the thousands of people that live there now, that's quite a lot. I also noted as late as Sunday, October 6th, the RGJ, when the questions were posed to the two candidates of Ward 5, how can the city of Reno manage growth better? Current Councilman Devin Reese mentioned a couple of things that caught my eye. He said, I'm focused on growing up as opposed to out, which is, I think you said earlier, to me, I translate that to be infill. And obviously, buildings that go up rather than out. He also adds, we've really got to focus our growth trajectory on making sure we're building within the McCarran Loop and that we're building up rather than out. So that McCarran Loop to me is almost like the new Ward 1 downtown ward. So we're talking about just a lot of more growth on top of residential units. So when I see that you made protection of neighborhoods one of the key focuses or foci of your review of Title 18, I just wanted to ask you, as a development services professional, how would you define a neighborhood?
How would I define a neighborhood? I think it's the context of what we're talking about. I mean, if it was a new apartment building going into a neighborhood, I would look at the immediate streets, the immediate houses or whatever buildings right next to it. If we're talking about the Wells Avenue neighborhood, that's a defined boundary. It's a much broader neighborhood. If we're talking about the Foothills neighborhood, that is, again, something more on the outskirts, the suburban areas of town. So I think it depends on the context of what we'd specifically be looking at.
Okay, so with that kind of broad definition, would you think, is downtown a neighborhood?
I think it could be. And I think, the way our zoning code is defined is we have our downtown zoning districts are broken up. We have an entertainment district. We have a Northwest Quadrant district. We have more of the California Avenue district. So from that perspective, while we have a core downtown, I think it depends on specifically what part of downtown you're in, whether it's, In-N-Out Burger. I mean, that's almost a separate neighborhood in itself versus Jacobs, that's a separate neighborhood. So I would say it depends on what we're talking about in terms of, is this new building going into a neighborhood or is it a big street project happening? I don't know that it's a black and white answer.
Okay, would you call the Second Street corridor a neighborhood?
It could be. Again, are you talking about within, maybe tell me what you're trying to get at. I'm not sure I'm going to give you the answer you're looking for.
I guess I'm kind of in a backdoor way trying to make a case that downtown, at least where I live in the Montage and other high rises, and given the stated intent to have more infill in an area that one could loosely define as downtown, and that there are already units out there planned, that it leads me to the question of, is there anything in this current cleanup regarding downtown that gives it more protection as a residential, from a residential standpoint?
I mean, I think our downtown, just based on our zoning, has a ton of flexibility that encourages density. We have unlimited building height, unlimited density, no parking requirements. All of those things really are encouraging the most intense development in our downtown core. The further out we go, just based on the way our zoning is defined, the more regulations we have on building height, what our setbacks have to be. Now we require more parking if you're outside that downtown core. But our downtown core, the way that's in our code right now, is really intended to be the most intense development.
But what about the word protections, though? We've been working for a while with you, and thank you for all you're doing on it, on the noise side. But there are other things too. There's signage that's basically on the table right now in terms of downtown. There's one of your slides was showing exterior lighting standards. But it just seems to me there's too much of a contrast between something like that and having large potential signage downtown that's very, very bright. Was there any thought in the cleanup to giving more protections to residents downtown?
No, again, I think based on our master plan policies, our master plan really is directing intense development to our core downtown. And with that, it calls out high rises. It calls out mixed use development. So that is just based on our higher level policies where council has given direction. They want to see more density, more intensity, high rise buildings, more walkable neighborhoods. Those are the things that we are pushing for just in general with the master plan and with our zoning. That's where we want to see that type of development.
Okay, I understand that, but wouldn't the increase in the number of residents necessarily lead to some correlation to protections for those residents as those grow? Because, there's no businesses are growing there right now, according to the monthly report, but there's a lot of new residents coming just because they're high rises and because they're more dense. Wouldn't that lead to more, shouldn't there be more protections for the residents then?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if there's something specifically that we need to do more of, now would be a good time to let us know how we can help provide that opportunity.
Well, I think, again, it gets down to the mixed use and it's a compatibility issue. So I guess it's hard to get too specific, but, noise is one of them. The lighting, I think, I can speak for myself just through conversations. I can't speak for other downtown residents, obviously, but there is a great deal of concern about expanding the number of kinds of businesses beyond the casinos downtown and on the size of the signage compared to elsewhere in the city. We've never thought of ourselves, I don't think, as Las Vegas. And I think as more residents come downtown, even if they come for entertainment, there's a certain limit, I would say. And I personally have some serious concerns about that signage. We won't go into noise. It's not part of this, but it's part of that general intent that I always try to keep coming back to is downtown is made up of more and more residents. And that how does the compatibility work with everything else that's going on there? So just does that kind of, it's nothing that would surprise you, me making a comment like this, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as any kind of growing entertainment downtown district, how do you find two opposite uses living together, right? We've got nightclubs, we've got bars open 24 hours a day, right next door to where people live. I think it's a challenge for every city with a downtown. I also think, most downtowns with high rises have this problem. They have people living where you have people upstairs and you have bars downstairs. That creates a vibrant economy. I think we got to figure out a way then to address the noise, whether it's changes to our building code requirements or changes to, when we shut down our downtown. Maybe we shut down at 2 a.m. like California does. Again, that is something that right now is not being discussed with the zoning code update, but if that's the direction that council wants to go, we would process that as a separate kind of review and text amendment. But staff's not proposing anything like that for downtown. Most of our downtown language that's in our zoning code, we're keeping. We're not modifying the hours. We're not modifying the signs. We're not modifying building height. What's there today, we're proposing to leave as is.
Mr. Chair, does anyone else have additional questions?
Yes. Yes, I believe Bryce has some questions as well. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, this was a lot of work. I've opened it a few times like Gary has, and I was like, no, I don't think I can get into this too much. I remember you've been working on it for a long time, and when it came to council originally, like there was something about the affordable housing initiatives and whatnot. And so that's been taken out of the new proposal?
Yes, the good news is council asked us to take that out and process it separately. So we did that. Council did adopt an affordable housing ordinance. The short term, or I guess big picture, we are allowing more density if you do affordable housing. So if you have a subsidized affordable housing project, we allow you to do more than the standard zoning would allow. We also set up a path where we fast track you when you come in for a building permit. So the idea is that we can get more affordable housing and get it to market faster. So council approved that. That was in July, August, when that officially got adopted.
Yeah, well, that's good. Thank you. I think you skipped a page in the presentation and you're going, it was the lighting,
Yes.
but I just kind of read through it, but just wanted to let you know that.
Yep. So high level, thank you for that. High level, we currently regulate kind of three things when it comes to lighting. We regulate lumens, we regulate kelvins, and we regulate how much kind of goes off the property, kind of, we call it spillover lighting. So we are no longer going to regulate lumens. That's not, I would say, standard for most jurisdictions. That was kind of a one-off unique to us. We're not very good at regulating lumens, so it didn't make sense. If we're trying to regulate something that we can't even enforce, why is it in our code? The key things that we're looking at is all lights have to be shielded and pointing downward. That's been in code. That's not changing. We are looking at how much lighting goes past your property line. We didn't change that. That's still the same. And then kind of the brightness of these lights, we're also looking at, same thing. The one thing that we are looking at is that residential adjacency. So if you have a parking lot, let's say a Target, and you're next to residentially zoned property, we are limiting how tall your lights can be, whether it's a light on a wall or lights in the parking lot. We're limiting that to 18 feet in height. And I would say that was probably the biggest improvement related to lighting and residential adjacency that's come out of the code cleanup.
Yeah, that'll be good. Okay. And the last thing, I guess, is the grandfathered part in. I think Jeff was kind of, I don't know, maybe the one by Boomtown. Those warehouses that are right next to the housing.
Yes.
And I know those houses are looking right into the loading docks and whatnot.
Mm.
And then from that middle picture, I don't think it is that one that you were talking about, but it was University and 7th, that new apartment
Okay.
complex right by the freeway. I just know that one is so close to the roadway and they park along that street as well. Every time I drive down that one, I think someone's going to open their door and I'm just going to rip right through it. And so I don't know what the setbacks difference it says 1-to-1 here.
Uh-huh.
What was it before?
So it depends on what your zoning is. So if you are in a zoning district that is single family, or we call it MF14, it's a multifamily, 14 units per acre, that step back requirement takes place. If you're in a mixed use zoning, which is most of our downtown, all of Virginia Street, most near the university, mixed use, that does not apply. It would only apply if you are in a residentially zoned neighborhood. And again, it goes back to the whole purpose of those mixed use zoning districts was this is where, as a city, we said, this is where we want to see density and unlimited height. And again, all these things that we said we wanted, this is what it now looks like. And it's the struggle with, yes, we said we wanted it, but we didn't want that. So I mean, I think in a couple more years, as we're starting to see more of these infill projects come in, there's likely going to be kind of a pendulum swing of like, well, maybe we didn't want that much intensity. We don't want sprawl either, but we don't want intensity, right? We're trying to find that happy balance of where we're going to grow. If we don't want it here, and we don't want it there, how do we accommodate everyone's needs? Ideally, it would be great if we had more mixed use. I mean, it's great to have residential in our downtown. It's also great if we have a mix of, businesses on the ground, whether it's restaurants, commercial, retail, any businesses like a government agency. It'd be great if we had more of that. We just really struggle with getting any mixed use development in our downtown, which is funny. I mean, we're a fairly decent sized population city, but it's a struggle.
I think it's a lack of walkability
That too.
and, casinos closed off.
Yeah.
There's an entrance on each corner, but everything else is just like a dead zone in between.
Yeah.
And so why would you walk there when you could walk across the walkway up in the casino? So I want infill and I like all the building up. I just want a little more space so I don't rip somebody's door off soon. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I think, we have one more question.
Thank you. Mac Rossi for the record. I just wanted to know, you were talking about loading docks and stuff, and I just was concerned whether you have considered these small strip buildings where they have several businesses or even large business for that matter, that whether you're going to start allocating areas behind the business where the trucks can pull in and deliver their product. We're seeing the town is getting big enough now that I personally am getting tired of having to work my way around where a tractor and trailer is double parked with a lift gate coming down and an electrical jack coming down to make deliveries. And I think it's something that needs to be considered. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Okay, if we could move on to item D, future agenda items. Thanks, Angela.
I heard that maybe there was a stoplight going in at the Keystone Trailhead, so maybe we could hear something about that. But nothing else.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item E, continued public comment.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes, Gary, I'm sorry.
Sorry, you skipped C, the board commission committee member reports. I just wanted to just say that this would be my last Ward 5 NAB meeting because the new Ward 1 is where downtown is. I just wanted to say to you, Jeff, and you, Bryce, it's been a pleasure working with you and learn from you and just some great communication. And I will definitely miss that greatly. Although we'll be in different wards, if there's ever anything I can do to help you guys, please reach out. Let me know.
I was going to wait till we got to the public comment. I was going to mention you specifically, Gary. All that you've done for this ward is incredible. This NAB board is going to miss you, and the constituents of Ward 5 are going to miss you because you always had really good, solid input, feedback, questions. Again, we're going to miss that. So thank you very, very much for all that you did the whole time. And I'm sure you're going to take your expertise and all your wisdom with you right to Ward 5 and be on the NAB board there, or I'm sorry, Ward 1 and be on the NAB board there. So thank you for bringing that up. And I apologize missing that section C. So thank you.
Thank you.
See, Gary, that's why we need you here to keep him on track so he doesn't miss. I know you're going to be great for downtown and Ward 1. So it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a comment. I happen to work with Gary quite a bit, and I'm sure going to miss this. One more question.
Okay. Let's move on to section E, public comment. Do we have any?
Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the NAB's agenda. The NAB may not take action upon any matter not agendized on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you're an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment, please raise your hand at this time. We do not have any registered public comments at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
This is Bryce Chisholm. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Gary Cecil, for the record, I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.